The most influential ism in the country today appears to be Hindutva. It has taken a long time for this ideology to come of age. But what happened to the other ideological movements that began in the early 20th century? The RSS will turn 100 years old next year, but so will the Communist Party of India. Ambedkarism, Marxism, liberalism, Dravidianism, feminism, Gandhiism. What role are these great big isms of the 20th century playing in the 21st century? What relevance do they have today?
I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an a-leprechaun.
Why have there been casteism existing in the country still today?
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal
So the
rights.
nature of the system is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit.
I'm Sudipto Mondal, and welcome to this episode of What's Your Ism? Hello and welcome to yet another episode of What's Your Ism? Today we have an activist and a scholar with us. We will try to understand the ism of Dr. Rahul Sonpimple. Rahul, welcome to What's Your Ism?
Thank you, Sudipto. Thank you very much. Really glad
This
to
is
be here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
This is the
yes,
second time you are on a show in TNM. The last time we spoke, it was when you had come for this conference in Nanded for the Black the what do you call it, the Black Panthers conference in Nanded.
yeah. Dalit Panther from Black Panther Conference.
Dalit Panther, Black Panther conference. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed since then. And back then you were just finishing off your PhD. You're looking to
Yeah.
submit, and
Yes.
now you're a full-blown activist. Uh,
Yeah.
so for our audience, once again, just to give you an introduction of Rahul. Rahul, you were one of the people because of whom the Birsa Ambedkar Phule Students Association came into national prominence in the year 2016, which is the year you contested the presidential elections. Now,
Yes.
2016 was, of course, a watershed moment in anti-caste politics, and also in terms of a student uprising. That was the year, all over the country, you had a bunch of agitations in campuses, and you became the face of the Ambedkarite section of student leaders at that time. And you contested in this election where you gave this very famous speech saying this time in the JNU elections, there will be no Gabbar, there will be Kabali, right? Uh,
Yeah.
that that was the speech that went viral. We'll talk about this journey actually to start off with. You know how back in 2016 there was a lot of. I was just in preparation for this interview. I was watching your speech from 2016, speech in the JNU presidential elections, and I couldn't help but think how different those times were, because your speech talked about a rainbow coalition, right?
Yes.
It talked about a Satrangi formation, which is a multicolored formation. You talked about the Northeast, you talked about Kashmir, you talked about Muslims, you talked about OBCs, and also you talked about SCs and STs.
Yes.
Uh, and by doing that, you brought together a kind of a formation which almost won the election against what was considered a left dominated campus. Now, that was in 2016. A lot
Hmm.
of hazaron khwaishein were created in that year. Since
Yeah.
then, now you have come into an organization. You've just started an organization called the All India Independent Scheduled Caste Association.
Yes.
Uh, and from this Satrangi, from this multicolored formation, which you once spoke about in 2016, which captured the imagination of a lot of people across the country, now you're part of an organization which is focused purely on scheduled castes, the All India Independent Scheduled Caste Association. So, can we do one thing for this conversation? Now, what we try and do over here is discuss ideologies. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about what happened since 2016, how things shaped, what led to you coming to a situation where you're now focusing only on a specific component of that rainbow?
So yes, thank you, Sudipto, for this brief, revisit of my journey, specifically, my activism in JNU. So yes, as you rightly pointed that when we began our student activism in JNU. So since any university place is also a site of multiple realities, people coming from multiple communities, and JNU, as we know that and it was about also election. How do you create what we call a political majority of operates. So we had given a slogan of oppress unity against, let's say, the ruling upper caste minority, Hindu minority. So that was still in my heart ideologically. I'm still the same person. I still believe that there should be larger opportunity. I still believe that the various units, various communities from low caste communities, religious minorities, women, LGBTQ, and all the oppressed community. They need to come together. And while coming together, they also need to have kind of one common agenda, that how they can face challenge of what we say, the ruling minority, which is Hindu upper caste in this country. But as but when you go out of the university, then there are different challenges. For instance, when you see the existing reality of a caste and its implication on the communities, so it varies. For instance, if you look at scheduled caste communities, unlike OBCs or unlike tribes and also Muslim for that matter, they are the community. If I talk scheduled caste as a homogeneous category, so scheduled caste, is a community which has, whose culture has been destroyed, who has been reduced to, not just simply the surplus labor, but even their labor has not been regarded as a labor, just as a ritual duty, something as what Baba Sahib says, a surplus human bodies. So has that situation changed? I believe that somewhat the situation one can see, the situation one can see little bit is different. However, at larger level, scheduled caste across the region and across the regimes also, the situation has not been altered radically. And moreover, in this particular time, when you have the history, for instance, you have a history of formation of scheduled caste federation, you have a history of formation of Dalit Panther, you have the history of formation of larger umbrella category like Bahujan, BSP, BAMSE. And now in this time where most of the constitutional safeguards, most of the what I see, the contract with the modern Indian state, that the state has failed to stay with that particular contract with scheduled caste community. And with the rapid privatization and the government withdrawing itself from the situation where scheduled castes are struggling in their everyday life, I believe this is also the time has come again where scheduled castes once again understand that why their position in this particular time is very different, both economically and also politically. And that's the reason that we, not just me but people who are with me in my organization, all of us have this common understanding that this is a high time that the scheduled caste, along with talking about the other marginalized communities, they need to once again come together, because neither they have a land nor they have any traditional resources. Neither, and apart from that, they are also community, as I said, whose culture has been destroyed. That's what even Baba Sahib says. So culturally, also, what we believe that the after independence, or let's say after Baba Sahib, we had a hope that the scheduled caste as a community, whom scheduled caste will emerge as a as a culturally homogeneous community, where they would have first this political consciousness of being a scheduled caste first, and second, what we believe that the Buddhism will spread across the region, and there will be one cultural unity among scheduled caste. However, that has not been happened. That there are limitation, and that has somehow been stuck somewhere. And therefore, in taking this thing in the context, we believe that that we need to once again begin our movement with new beginning, and therefore going again with the scheduled caste, going again to organize scheduled caste first, and then later on other oppressed communities, specifically scheduled tribe after scheduled caste. Yes.
Right, right. But there are two things I want to get into based on what you just said. One, of course, the question of how the question of the scheduled caste is unique in this larger talk about the oppressed populations, and how you look at it. I suppose in a kind of a graded nature when you say that. You're working on scheduled caste right now, but then if you were to expand, you will expand into ST. I would imagine that means that you would expand for if you were to expand further still, you would go into OBC and then minority, and that's the way you see the gradation.
Yeah.
Now I want to definitely go into the question of what are therefore these gradations. How are these What are therefore these gradations in terms of
Yeah.
how are these other communities different? And I would want to go individually perhaps into each of these communities. But the other question for me also, before, because we are just starting off this discussion, is to understand what happened in 2016, because that being the origin point, I want to know it from the context of what happened to Rahul Sonpimple as well as what happened to Bapsa, right? So
Yeah.
this explosion happens. So that is
Yeah.
2016. Once again, why is it important? Because of Rohit Vemula, because of Una, because of the agitations that happened across Maharashtra, the Ambedkar Bhavan agitation in Bombay. There were
Yeah.
these huge explosions, and of course, right at that time, the Bapsa exploded on the
Yeah.
campus, saying that the right wing is definitely a problem, but the
Yeah.
left wing is also a problem.
Yeah.
Now, this was a time when a lot of different types of secular, so-called secular organizations were active, right?
Yeah.
Now, you introduced a different discourse at that
Yeah.
time. What
Yeah.
was that discourse, and at what cost did that discourse come? Because I understand there are a lot of people who were also part of this so-called secular umbrella are today in a much better position politically,
Yeah.
individually, as
Hmm.
institutions. If you look at the organizations that were part of the agitations then,
Yeah.
the left organizations, there were some
Yeah.
other kind of anti-caste organizations also. uh,
Yeah.
they somehow did better than many of the individuals who are associated with the radical Ambedkarite line. Tell me
Yes.
about that time, tell me about the journey, tell me about the contradictions that time threw up, because it's relevant even today.
Yeah. No, of course. See, as I said, that the campus is a site of multiple reality, and also this campus, university campus, is also the site of where you see the impunity of upper caste in JNU. For that matter, that impunity goes with the political correctness. That impunity goes with a lot of politeness. However, when you entered, in the campus and see reality very closely, you see that the what we talk outside, that how upper caste have monopolized the institution. JN is also one such case, and I believe that more or less all the university campuses are the same. And therefore, for us, it was we did not take much time to understand that the reality which exists outside of monopolization of upper caste of all institutions, and also having let's say the word we use, hegemony, that hegemony existed. But as I say, with a lot of political correctness, with a lot of upper caste politeness that exists across in what you call the secular liberal upper caste circle. And therefore, for us, I believe that that was, although we understand, did not take much time to understand it, but we took a lot of time to break it. You know, because if it is about right wing, it is about RSS, it is about other Hindu organization, it becomes very easy for for people to understand that there is one rigid fundamentalist kind of ideology which has everything is out there. You can go through their literature, you can go through their speeches and all of that. However, then you have other upper caste lobby whose things are secret, they are hidden. They have a mask, and that to basically remove that mask was very important for us, because when we saw that in the departments, like, which has been known, renowned department of social sciences in JNU and also sciences. So the divide was popular divide was that the science belongs to right wing and the social science belongs to left wing. And but when we saw the reality that the both the department, when it comes to scheduled caste, the candidate applying to the department, they would give the same reason of not appointing that particular scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or let's say OBC person, and that is not found suitable. So, and the logic of from both the department were the same, that they do not have merit. Even the so-called, like, let's say if I take a name of those professor who write about tribes, but in their department when the tribal candidate apply, they would say you are not found suitable, and therefore in the department there was not a single scheduled tribe candidate who, they could appoint, or they could in across the country, or like let's say among thousands of scheduled tribe candidate, they could not find one tribal candidate who was able, or let's say, had a merit to teach in that particular department. So we understood the reality that, although they are divided by their, let's say, political ideology, what they believe in, but the more deeper ideology that exists in India is basically to maintain this caste consensus, this, caste hegemony. So ideology is not, because see, and I don't believe that even, and as I said, the political correctness is, kind of ideology that, is been is there all over. But whenever there is a political correctness, I believe there is a more deeper ideology that exists, and that deeper ideology is this, that there will be always this particular group who want to protect their hegemony, who want to protect their, let's say, the their tradition of sitting in the different department and the university. I'll just finish. So what we then did, we worked more on to break down and to bring this deeper ideological current that still exists in the university department. And what become easy for us to make our people to understand that this exists, because they were the one who could see that, Dalit student, Dalit PhD scholar, Dalit, even faculty for that matter, they know that this exists, but there was no one who can articulate it very openly, and who can, become very let's say, because in the places like JNU, you want to speak about so-called celebrated left liberal faculty is kind of a crime. There is this social boycott within the campus that exists from upper caste students and from faculties, and we took it. We said it, no matter what happens, we will challenge this. And they actually attacked us back. Even so-called radical left called us fringe element and whatnot. Yeah,
No, that attack. I mean, that's the point I want to take off from. Actually, I asked you in that question. So, what cost did it extract from the people who were raising this discourse, right? Because today you see that a lot of people are very interested in Ambedkar. Today
yeah,
a lot of people are, like, for example, I don't want to take names, but a bunch of professors in the West who are of
yeah,
Indian origin,
yeah,
more precisely Brahmin, have recently
yeah,
got a grant of $1.7 million to study
yeah,
Ambedkar, right?
yeah,
There are any number of people today in foreign universities, also in Indian universities, who are researching Ambedkar, who
yeah,
are talking about Dalits, who are talking about the anti-caste discourse.
yeah,
But I noticed that none of you feature in that circuit. Is that the
yeah.
cost it extracted? That you created a discourse out of which you now are missing?
No, it will happen, because that's what I'm saying. That the if caste would have been simply about the behavior, that, like for instance, you're upper caste, I am Dalit, and you are behaving me very nicely. If it would have been simply about this, then situation would have been very different. But caste is about, it works as a structure, as an institution, right? And therefore people, and for instance, if I'm, Brahmin professor in some department, 2 decades before, if I was writing against reservation or against Ambedkar, suddenly when I see that if there is a market, and if suddenly I see that this has become the part of political correctness, that you are supposed, you will only be considered civilized enough or the liberal enough when you talk about Ambedkar or when you talk about Dalit, earlier Dalit was kind of a category which they would not like. They would love tribe most, because tribe, they know that the tribe is not here in the university in many number who would challenge our position. So they would hate Dalits and also OBC for that matter. But now there is no option that they have to take Ambedkar, and then only you can be politically correct. Then only you can be civil enough. Now, therefore, they are in the institution. Forget about us as a young scholars who just recently submitted their PhD. But even the established scheduled caste scholar, Ambedkarite scholar coming from Dalit community, what are they getting from it? And this is how even and then Dalit faculties or established scholars also, then they go for negotiation with these upper caste faculty. So it is always these masters are there. So if from this grant, if this particular professor choose to give something to some people, then the deal is fine. So this is how the academics operate. For instance, if they'll get a project, I got a request from one upper caste professor writing on caste and the CA and things, because I had written one article when you were working in some other place, and looking at that article, this professor wanted me to write. And I then when we check that how do they, and this is how it operates, that see, I am a master, I got something, now I can give you something out of this, so that I can get the legitimacy. So this is how academics for that matter, I must say that the after I see people working in the the landless, our people, a landless laborer in the field, very helpless, depending on the master, depending on the landlord. I see academics also operate in the similar manner. I see most of our academicians are so helpless and so desperate also to get something out of this well established structure, which is been completely controlled by the upper caste, and therefore it goes very easily. As far as people like me, or other people from SCU and other places who struggled, who brought this entire discourse of of caste is a part of your modern reality, is part of your everyday life. We made kind of popular out of our activism. We faced a lot of legal cases and things. I believe we this is the reality. These people will always be left behind. you know so these are also the surplus of our own movement. They will be always surplus. Either they will be in the death chamber like Rohit Yamula, or either they will be somewhere in the village like Sukanna, who will be struggling to bread and butter. So this is how even the movement works. This is how the entire structure works. Now, for instance, after 20 years, you might go back to Sukanna. Some university scholar want to document something, might go to Sukanna, see Sukanna, and I believe that he should come out from that situation. But I know, like Sukanna, many of my activist friends from the university are struggling a lot in their everyday life, just
Yeah,
because
not
they
just
still
Sunkana. I
don't
mean,
want to come. Yeah,
yeah, not just Sunkana. That whole batch. I mean, if you look
yeah,
at
that
so
whole batch.
Sunkana,
Yeah, that, yeah,
so the students who were suspended, along with, just for our viewers who don't, I mean, that's the sad thing, that we have to reintroduce these characters who were at one point making headlines. Now, eight
yeah.
years later, we have to reintroduce them. So Sunkanna Velupula is one of the people who were suspended along with Rohit Vemula.
Who refused to take a degree from
Who
Apparao.
refused to accept his PhD from the Vice Chancellor Apparao
Yes,
back then.
yes.
And that video of him refusing to take that award,
It was
turned him
powerful.
into an overnight sensation
Yes, yes.
across the world. Now, of course, the Dalit Ambedkarite network, the anti-caste network, is now across the world, and because of social media, so instantly there was this recognition for Sunkanna, but that
Yeah.
recognition became also his undoing, in the sense that I from what I gather, he gave 26 interviews and he was rejected because he was qualifying for the interview because of his qualifications, but in the interview stage, something else was happening, and then there is
No, but
Seshu
this
Chamarapura.
also brings us very close to the academic reality, where even some of our people are sitting. For instance, when we talk about representation, what does representation means? That if you are sitting in some particular place and some candidate from marginalized section is coming, if he or she has enough qualification for that particular position, then you make sure that particular person gets that benefit of that seat, right? Are therefore that is, I believe, the core idea of representation. Otherwise, there is nothing legal act that you are a scheduled caste, you are sitting in one particular position, you will definitely make sure that there will be no discrimination, or you will pay back to society. There is no law like that. So it is all about, then representation becomes the moral duty or the ethical duty of helping out your own people. who are struggling. But is this happening? Means I particularly believe in academic. I have seen very closely. It doesn't happen. As I said, that the established scholar even from our community, they have to work with their upper caste masters for the grant, for the recognition. They also want to forward of some upper caste scholar on their book. So then only it can be. And so this is how the entire circle works. Now, Sudipto, I'll just add one more thing here. See, people like Sukarna, or even like when I must say that when I met most of our people from SCU, that and those who were doing activism, I believe that although I come from slum, but when I studied in Tees, I kind of got some kind of mobility in my life. But when I met this our brother from the campuses, specifically from SCU, they were more helpless than us.
The
They were
Hyderabad
more
University
helpless.
students, yeah,
Yes,
the ASA,
and
Ambedkar Students
yes,
Association, yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah.
they were more helpless, and I believe that the what they did not have, what we see that some of our people are able to do to commodify, everything about them in this so-called liberal upper caste market, which some of the people even staying in US, living all good life, but then taking the benefit of this particular discourse and writing some very poorly written, what they call autoethnography, but still can get famous. But those who still have, those who have seen poverty, humiliation, and still struggling, giving their all life. What they did not have this marketing skill, and they failed. They did not have the
But
skill of networking.
but Rahul, this uh, marketing skill, if you want to really get into it, in many of these cases, of course, the fact is that in each of the people who have become part of this marketplace, there is an origin story which is obviously traumatic, which is obviously coming from the same marginalized section. So there is, you cannot delegitimize it so much. But
No,
the
I'm not
point there is,
delegitimizing it.
no, no,
I'm
no,
saying that there will be
I'm not saying
always
you're
this
delegitimizing.
surplus. There will always be this
Absolutely.
surplus in your own movement. I'm saying
No, no,
who
absolutely.
will be left
I'm not
behind.
saying that you delegitimize. I'm not at all. I'm just trying to draw your attention to the fact that the marketplace, because it is controlled by the people who control it, also has entered into some kind of negotiations with these people, right? So you have this entire game of patronage. So if you have today so-called Ambedkarite voices, which are patronized or promoted or amplified by so-called people on the left, right?
Hmm.
You will find people who are, again, from these discourse builders who you talk about, who are representatives of some other formation. It's almost like a Trojan horse, right? Which is, they become symbols for something else as you go along. So in that, do you see this as a conspiracy to promote a certain kind of mediocrity, so that the radical Ambedkar gets subdued to a certain extent? When you talk about,
This has, yeah, this has always been there. This has always been there, and this is what it happens now. Even at the level, if one has to talk about some scholarly work, I can give you 10 different scholars who are still struggling just to get good publishers, or just because for these academicians they are not ready to write the experience, they want to write theory.
mm,
Like, so if I write experiences, then there are many people who are buyer of it. But when someone wants to talk about theory, that
right.
or want to build theory, then there will be few, or your entire life will go, you will be 50, 60, and then they will recognize you. This is what, it this is how. So I agree with you, but the word you use, the negotiation, these people from our community, from the same origins, are able to do negotiation with these upper caste masters, right? I believe, but negotiation for whom and for what? Right? I believe that the is absolutely fine if they are able to do good negotiation, but with that negotiation, if it is simply about popularizing what, let's say, or equate, getting this international, comparing with some international oppressed identity, and then making some illogical argument out of this. This is not how the negotiation works. The negotiation for what and for whom. So I believe that if they are doing good negotiation, then they would make sure that there are 100 scholars from the marginalized background from India who would get scholarship, who would get a place to stay, don't have to struggle, right? So negotiation works like this. Ambedkar also did a lot of negotiation for for his people. He said, okay, this is your jail, and this particular jail now यहाँ पे कोई नहीं है. This is completely vacant, and this was jail. Our people are there on the street. Why didn't you give this jail? Even the small negotiation, give this jail to our people. They can make good use of it, right? वो वहाँ पे रहे, तो चौल बना वहाँ पे. Baba Sahib said, why are you not recruiting our people in the police? They are physically fit. They have a history of fighting and war and all of that. Recruit our people in the police and the military. So I'm saying that the negotiation for whom and for what? If the negotiation is just about the individual subjectivity and celebrating this individual subjectivity, I don't believe that is going anyway. It is good, like for instance, to read something about some oppressed people and then consume the guilt. This is how I believe that the present political correctness works. You cannot live a life without consuming guilt. But then if you want to consume the guilt, you also need an authentic subject out there. Then who is the authentic subject? Those who is writing or speaking and also becoming popular about his or her experience, and then so upper castes are there who want to consume this authentic subject. Our question is this. Our question is about, if it is about negotiation, tell us what are you giving, how many seats or how many scholarship you are giving to my people, how it is going to help my 1,000 people, my 100 people. This is how I believe the negotiation should be. And I believe that our academicians have failed to do this. They have completely failed to do that. They are not even able to protect their student in the university, that their students commit suicide. They know that the reality is this, the situation is this, and after suicide then they come, they cry, and they want to give some money, whatever. And this is how it is happening. So that's what I'm asking. Where is this negotiation? Where is this negotiation in the university, that if your 10 students are doing activism, trying to protect your other students, where is that negotiation is happening? Where is that negotiation from the intellectuals and academicians saying, okay, you do your activism, we are here. If they put some legal cases on you, we are here. Now we are still struggling with our legal cases. I individually go invest, get some money
And
from
that's
here and go to court. No one knows where I'm going. Whether I'm going, like by general dabba, or like how I'm going traveling. No one knows, no one cares, and I don't, and we don't even talk about it. Now you're asking, so I'm telling people like me are there who are individually fighting their cases, still struggling, just because we challenge, some authority. But as you said, and I believe this is how it works. This is how institution works. This is how some of us will always be surplus for our people also and for other people also. And this is how I believe. And this is a tragedy. This is a tragic situation of our movement, that I have seen our activists even committing suicide after some point of life in life, because they do not have enough even to survive. And we fail to create a mechanism where we can even make sure the basic necessity of our activists, that they can say, you can say that okay, you take this 20,000, 10,000, where you can buy medicine for yourself, or one bread and butter for yourself. So yes.
right, right. Thanks. Now, all of this that we have discussed, I feel in a way beautifully sets us up for some pointed discussions, right, about the nature of our politics and Rahul Sonpimple's ism, right? What is
Yeah.
your ideology made up of? And in that, the first thing I want to get into is what I started off talking about, which is the arrival at the concept of SC, as opposed
Hmm.
to this Rainbow Coalition, as opposed to Birsa, Ambedkar, Phule, which means Birsa means the Adivasi question, Phule means the OBC question. It's assumed, right? Now, how did you come to the conclusion that focusing on the SC question is the main thing? So why are you not part of larger coalition politics? What contradictions did you see?
No, the first thing I believe that it began from the very understanding of a caste, for that matter. That I believe that in the post Ambedkar time, that the caste has been mostly understood through, let's say, more as a cultural presence of a caste and less as a material. And also that the role of an Indian state, or the relation of an Indian state with the lower caste for that matter. So with these two questions, I would go little ahead. But why I'm referring these two things, because I believe that when it is about caste, so I believe that the most of us have now been very successful to uh, get recognize ourselves, or let's say, as I said, that we have won a symbolic battle. Now everyone wants to talk about Ambedkar, right? And in this journey, we left caste as a material question. That the caste, if it is cultural, of course, but it is more as a material question where it gives a lot of power for upper caste to monopolize the resources or even to reproduce caste in so-called modern institutions. And with this, with this understanding, I believe that the scheduled caste within the caste hierarchies, with this material understanding of caste, scheduled caste in caste hierarchy are more vulnerable than any other community. Because why? Be- I'll just answer this because, as I
If
said,
you'll
that the
allow me to
scheduled
interrupt you just for a second, if you'll allow me to see, I understand the point about being the most vulnerable. That is the point that I understand. But what when I'm speaking about the other
yeah,
potential coalition partners,
yeah,
what comes in the way of a coalition? See, the point is very well taken that this is the most vulnerable community. What prevents the most vulnerable community from common ground with, let's say, OBCs, right? When the concept of Bahujan is discussed, right? Now we notice that those who are most often talking about the concept of Bahujan in campus spaces, in intellectual spaces, come from the OBC communities, right? And you notice that increasingly they are taking up a larger space in the anti-caste discourse than the most vulnerable community, as you put it, right? And that the most vulnerable community is not able to participate in a discourse which is of its own making. In its own making, when I say it in terms of preserving the legacy of Ambedkar, for example, is
yeah,
something that the scheduled castes have done, right?
yeah,
In terms of ST, OBC, minority, nobody else has really invoked or studied
yeah,
or applied Ambedkar, right?
yes.
In spite of which, in the anti-caste discourse, you will see a predomination of OBCs. How does that
Yes.
prevent the coalition from happening? Do you think that's a factor?
That is very much factor. You see, for instance, as you spoke about this entire concept of Bahujan, and this entire concept of Bahujan, even Dalits, they take they took on their shoulder and they propagated the very concept of Bahujan, specifically after Baba Sahib. And Dalits, for that matter, became the very strong political category who ran their movement with their own autonomous resources, or they mobilized the resources. What happened later, many in my own state, after BAMSEF was completely been, all the resources of BAMSEF mostly came from the scheduled caste employees. However, they took the Bahujan as an ideology, and from that Bahujan ideology, Maratha Sevak Sangha organization came into being. Right? They took the
Oh,
ideological current from the BAMSEF. The founder of Maratha Sevak Sangha was a member of BAMSEF, and then he
wow.
formed the Maratha Sevak Sangha. Now, after forming the Maratha Sevak Sangha, these particular people never stood, politically they will be okay, we are same and all of that. But when it comes to the cases like atrocity cases against Dalits, when it came to about implementing reservation or many other things. So what we believe that the entire Bahujan movement was, still is been running on the cost of scheduled caste. However, even for that matter in UP, when you see the small OBC caste political parties like these the Patels and Mallas and all other so-called lower OBCs and also OBCs. It was initially scheduled caste activists, employees, BAMSE, BSP, who gave the articulation to these particular communities. Now the same communities have been they left the party, they left the movement, and they started their own respective political parties for their own particular communities. I'm not saying it is good or bad, but what I'm trying to say when this entire movement is been running by, what do they show? They show, okay, see, some Dalits have been killed, the atrocity is there. On that basis, anything becomes important. whether it's the caste discourse in the media or in the popular narratives, or even for that matter in the intellectual arena. Why, the atrocity on Dalits becomes the focal point to or gives the entry to discuss about the caste. But when it has to be benefited, it benefits only those who are already mobile, who can capture the space, who can articulate. And in this regard, I still believe outside there in the campuses also, in the society largely, you see that the politically one can even see some shift of OBC sometime for some Dalit political party for a very small span of a time, mostly in UP and Maharashtra. Maybe two cases can be studied. But I believe when it comes to this social recognition or having this social unity, it is not happening. And I believe that why it will happen, because you are living in a society where power is being so concentrated somewhere, with mostly Brahmins and the Baniyas. Now other caste, they too want to power, and if the caste is giving you power, relative power, to feel something special about yourself, why would you want to live that? Why would we forget about the other community in place like Maharashtra, in Marathwada, Dhangar community, which has been considered as one of the backward communities. After Maratha, they commit most atrocities on Dalits. So therefore, now where does this Bahujan concept goes? Where does the Jat fits into this Bahujan concept? Where does this so-called dominant Yadav fits into the Bahujan concept? And even there are many small, bigger OBC communities. Where do they fit into the Bahujan concept? We started the discourse. We still believe in larger Bahujan unity. But as you rightly asked me that why did I departed from this particular position? So I departed because now this is a time where we have lost everything in the movement, and our situation is so worse. No other community is ready to come and say, okay, we are ready to build this movement once again. No, no one is coming.
Actually, since you mentioned this, I mean, there's no other community is coming. This is a question that keeps coming up repeatedly, which is the Dalit basically has broadly, let's say, if you take, how the discourse goes, has three political options. One is to ally, to have a coalition, social coalition. One is with the Muslims, or with the OBCs, or with the supposedly the communist movement. Right.
Hmm.
Now, I want to ask you, I mean, the communist movement, though we have spoken about many times, last conversation also was about that. But tell me, Dalit Muslim unity, why is it? Because these are the two of the most persecuted communities in the country today.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
contradiction that you pointed out with OBCs is evident, which is that the OBC is both oppressed by the upper caste as well as the oppressor of the person who is below.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
But in the case of the Muslim, why has it been so difficult to forge a ideological alliance,
No,
a common ground, a political
it has
ground?
been very difficult. No, I don't believe that it has been very difficult. Although, if you look at the history from Maharashtra to North India, Dalits and Muslims time and again came together, and they, desired to come together to form a larger unity. Of these two. However, as I said, this intervention of so-called OBC discourse within this larger, discourse has not necessarily been helpful for us. For instance, when we speak about having Dalits and the Muslim unity, somewhere from the so-called Pasmanda scholars will come and say, "Ki this is, you are having a unity with the upper caste." But now the reality is, because now within even the so-called OBC Muslims, it's not that they are very oppressed, and therefore, then they're oppressed more than, other Muslim. I know that the if uh, there are even upper caste Muslims. I understand there is a caste, but if you see Muslim as a homogeneous category, now is become the kind of a category, let's say, kind of a criminal kind of category, that the Hindu right wing have been successful to make that category as a new, I would not say untouchable, but new deviant kind of category for a larger society, right? And in this regard, I always believe that I consider Muslim as a homogeneous category still for for many reasons. I do not completely buy this so-called Pasmanda discourse which criminalize the upper caste Muslim. They obviously they did a blunder. Upper caste Muslim did a blunder of practicing caste. But in this particular time, I don't believe that they are able to practice that particular caste or things very with a lot of impunity, right? And in taking this in a particular context, I want to ask that, what has so-called OBC Muslim, the Pasmanda Muslim, so-called, who are getting the benefit of reservation, what have they done, for the lowest of the low, for let's say for Hindu Dalits or for Buddhist Dalits for that matter. So we as a community who is more vulnerable, we have all the right to choose our partner, not through your ethical lens, but with our practical situation. And our practical situation allows and compel us to have the Muslim community as our partner in the movement. And I don't disregard that.
That's an important statement to make. And
Yeah.
but would you accept, would you concede that every time Dalit Muslim formations have come together, it has always benefited some Congress type of party? In regional situations, there are many parties which kind of occupy the broad position that the Congress occupies, which is, it is not a Sanghi political party, but it is somewhat secular. So it brings together these two communities. But never has it happened that either a Muslim party or a Dalit party has been able to really bring these two forces together, because arithmetically, when you look at it, it seems like a brilliant formula.
Yes.
Why do you think that has not happened?
No,
That a
because
Dalit party or a Muslim party has not been able to consolidate these two forces together.
because I believe that, I believe that the leaders or the people from both the communities realize that they, as you said, this particular combination has a lot of potential. And if you look at the, not this Lok Sabha, but the 2019 wala Lok Sabha election, where OAC and Balasaheb Ambedkar, they came together, and they did well. They won one Aurangabad seat, which is been traditionally the so-called right-wing Hindu seat, Aurangabad, and they won
Right.
that particular seat. And even though you look at the vote percentage also, right? So what I'm trying to say, that these particular communities, leaders and their activists and their intellectuals, they need lot much brainstorming, lot much trust among their, brotherhood among themselves, to create this organic unity, right?
Hmm.
And and, and, and as you said, it has a potential. I don't believe that the in this particular time, this Pasmanda discourse, or it has any potential even for Dalits or for Muslim for that matter, to at least politically, to gain something out of, from that. And therefore I believe that this distrust needs to be broken down. This divisive intervention from so-called, so some few Pasmanda scholars needs to be broken down, specifically from Dalit side. And also because if Muslim does that, they automatically becomes a villain for them, because, right, because they have their own struggle within that politics. But as a Dalit, you called me activist, as Dalit activist. Although I don't like that term, but it's okay. That Dalit activist, being Dalit activist, I believe that this particular combination has a lot of potential, and we need to work a lot to develop this trust, between us. This, let's say, this brotherhood between us, where we can actually form a very good combination, in which can work for longer time. And I'll just add one more thing. Now this is also time, I believe, of the time of during where Baba Sahib is arguing in the roundtable conference, that how scheduled caste is a minority, and the way you have given the separate electorate to the Muslims, similar separate electorate we also want, because we are a minority, we are not a part of a larger so-called Hindu unity. And therefore, because we are, as a we are a minority, we need the political safeguard and the political rights. And this is how the entire negotiation began. Muslims had their own separate nation, and what happened next we all know. But with Dalits for that matter, Baba Sahib entire this activism for that matter was about having this negotiation with so-called modern Indian state, that what are you offering us, because you
Hmm.
have offered something to the Muslim as a political minority, as a religious minority, what you are offering to us. Now the
Hmm.
state is not offering anything to us. Therefore, Dalits and the Muslim, they should come together and compel the Indian state to offer something us, right? to basically participate in the larger political process. And as you said, this combination works, and this combination can radicalize the entire politics. Now one has to leave some this this short comings, or this, let's say, this very small interest of small communities. I don't believe in this bifurcation of a larger reality. People always say that one has to bifurcate the reality, one has to look at into. I rather believe that one always has to look into the larger reality. This is how the system works.
Right. And in this segment, I mean, I'm going to move on to something else after this question. But in this segment, I want to ask one last question. You said that after working or towards organizing SCs, or if you had an opportunity to move and expand, the first category you would consider would be the ST, the tribal,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Adivasi question. Now, in your understanding, what do you think has been the nature of the Dalit and the Adivasi mobilization? We can all quite clearly see that it has taken off on not divergent but different issues. In terms of the Adivasi question is articulated in terms of Jal Jangal Jameen,
Hmm.
whereas the Dalit discourse has traditionally been articulated in other terms, right?
Hmm.
In terms of political representation, in terms of so many other things. So tell me, what have, in your experience, what has been the difficulty of bringing these two elements together? Because this is again a very powerful combination. Although
Yeah.
rhetorically everyone says SC/ST, but really it
Yeah.
is not that homogeneous, or there is really not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, I believe, see, there are two particular, let's say realities, or let's say two particular narrative that works when it comes to SC and ST. So one narrative we speak about having, as I said, I always believe in this particular term which I use. What is our relationship with the modern state? What is our negotiation with the modern state? So when it comes to ST, so the ST is, when, so it becomes very easy for to having this combination of SC ST and then negotiate with the state, right? So so, so therefore, when the Adivasis, when they are becoming part of so-called modern institution or larger urban realities, or the reality of so-called villages of India, apart from their interior places, when they are becoming to so-called larger reality, then there also their questions of also does not remain very different with the other narrative present. And this other narrative is this, which comes from so-called tribal activists, not necessarily tribe but other upper caste or other people who would always argue on the line of jal jungle jameen, right? Now I'm not saying they should not fight for their jal jungle jameen, but what I'm trying to say that it is difficult for any community or any marginalized community to escape from the larger reality, and that reality is the capitalism, that reality is urbanization. Now if you want to live in your own dogma or in idealism where you want to see that the Adivasis still are the real proletariat who will fight against the state, I don't believe in that particular argument. What I believe, if this reality is churning, and if the larger Adivasi population is becoming the part of informal labor and informal economy, or becoming the part of larger feudal economy where they are landless laborer, then the issues of SC and ST, apart from some untouchability and some these cultural social issues, I don't believe that their realities are very different. They are somewhere or other are basically their realities are interjecting, and therefore this combination of SC ST works very well. As I said, that the larger ST population has, as I said, is now not that they are moving majorly to the urban places. Anyway, they are moving to urban places, but it's also that their places have been urbanized, and there is no force. There is no upper caste, some JNU or others call person who romanticize their reality can stop this urbanization, or can stop this particular mining. Now, therefore, I believe for Adivasis also, after 20 years, after 30 years, after 50 years, this question will become the potent question, that what is their negotiation with the modern state? That if you have plundered all our resources, you have destroyed everything for us. Now, if there is a reservation that also you're not implementing, then, and you have privatized everything, and everything around us, then what is our relationship with you? What is, how do we should trust you as a modern state, who can do so-called welfare of the marginalized. So this was a question of a Dalit for a longer time, and I believe this will become a potent question, real question of a tribe in coming days. And therefore, I truly believe that the SC and ST can become a very good combination. Apart from some, relative anger and the deprivation that some of tribal activists and some of these, Jal Jungle Jameen romanticized people argue on the line of that how against Ambedkar and against this and that, which sounds good for some time. But I believe that the reality is this, that they are becoming part of larger informal economy, informal labor, and they are becoming part of your so-called village, which they were not part earlier. So,
Mm.
yes.
Interesting, interesting. So, I mean, I actually each of these subjects that we have discussed, Rahul. As this show is developing, I don't know if you've been watching some of the episodes, but we had Sumit Maskar also last time, who has been an
Yes.
advisor to your organization. I believe that many of these conversations that we are having within this 1 hour slot will deserve a discussion by themselves. And when I
Yeah.
have you over again, each of these
Yeah.
topics, the Dalit Muslim question, the Dalit Adivasi question, I want to go deeper into. But let's come quickly now that we have little time left to look at the SC question itself, the Dalit question itself. Now, if you look at the ability to mobilize, if you look at the ability to create a disruption, in the last 10 years of Modi's rule, we have seen different communities and their ability to create a disruption.
Hmm.
If you look at the intermediary communities, they, in their anger manifested in the form of the farmers' agitation, let's say.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
If you look at Muslims, okay, the NRCCA was a show of
Hmm.
strength, a show of how the community can organize. In the case of the Northeast, of course, very marginalized and everything, but then nevertheless, if you talk about their politics as a politics of resistance, they
Hmm.
have managed to resist in great degree. The Kashmiris have managed to keep their discourse alive and resist. But when you talk about Dalits creating a political disruption in order for their issues to be highlighted. Why is it that we have not seen a concerted kind of a Dalit mobilization in the country? Why have we not seen, when we talk about Dalit Adivasi unity, Dalit Muslim unity, Bahujan unity, sometimes the question really comes down to what about Dalit unity first?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah, then that is a
So,
bigger question
therefore,
for us.
that's a good
Yeah.
entry point for us to discuss your organization, which is the All India Independent Scheduled Caste
Yes.
Association.
Yeah.
It's not the first Dalit formation to have
Yes.
that we've come
Obviously.
across, but how is it different? How is it going to address this?
No, that is precisely happening by, as you see that I don't see that there are constant and conscious effort to bridge this gap, or let's say unite up different scheduled caste community in different regions. And therefore the first goal of aim of our organization, the first line that we have written, that our aim is to unite scheduled caste communities. So we are not taking load of uniting Bahujans, but what first burden that we are taking is to unite different scheduled caste communities. And in this, why, and it also has a history why that we are saying that we want to unite scheduled caste, because whatever we as a scheduled caste got is not because of a sub category, or because of our, at least constitutionally if I speak, politically I speak, what we the entire our recognition, or what I call this negotiation, is happened because Baba Sahib created this new category, which is kind of a class category. Scheduled caste in that way, it's a new class category, which is going in, entering into negotiation with the so-called modern state, right? And therefore, I believe that if at all we believe in democratic principle, or in this so-called setup of modern state where the government is there and the other institutions are there, then I believe that this becoming political class, becoming this politically conscious class of containing all small and bigger scheduled caste communities is very important, and that has not happened. That should have been the case. Rather, our people started building this entire Bahujan narrative, which is good politically when you are the electoral politics. However, at the social level, we fail to unite even scheduled caste, for that matter, with the larger umbrella of scheduled caste category. And yes, as now you see that this said, now whatever is happening, whether it's our politics or whether it is about our rights, at the end it's scheduled caste who is at again the vulnerable position. At the end it is scheduled caste who maybe in the bigger or the smaller form are coming in front of state and also facing repercussion. What happened during SC/ST Act? How many so-called Bahujan organization came on the street and supported Dalits on the street? And then it's so-called again the mobile Dalit who came on the street, gave their life for the SC/ST Act because they are politically conscious that why this is important, right? So and therefore I believe that this the importance of scheduled caste category in the post-independent India is very important. Our people needs to understand that the scheduled caste as a category is not simply about one caste, but it is about having the larger class, category. When we say we are a scheduled caste, and when we have this larger class category, we can have a good negotiation with the political parties, different political parties, and the state. And also it opens up the new things for us, which is basically having our own political party or political movement. So yes.
Right. So, one of the things which is right now in the, a conversation that is being, that is dominating the SC fold is this order of the Supreme Court which has come in the case of the subcategorization, right? There are two views on this. If you ask people like Mandakrishna Madiga, who is part of the MRPS, he will say something else, whereas if you ask another politician within the Dalit fold, they will say that subcategorization is leading to divisions in among SCs. You might have heard Mayawati in her press conference said
Mm.
that earlier only the central government would have the power to notify or denotify communities on the basis of caste. The SC category is something only parliament could decide on. Now every state government and every party which is regional will fiddle around with the SC category based on their own political needs and requirements. So that is one line of criticism. The other line of criticism is that we were never united in the first place, and we were not united because there are these internal imbalances allegedly. If you, like I said, if you hear a Mandakrishna Madiga, he will say there are internal imbalances which need to be addressed. That the Madigas are fundamentally lower in the caste hierarchy, are more oppressed in the caste hierarchy than the Mala. The state which you come from, Maharashtra, there is
Yes.
also this, the question of the larger Dalit unity can never be addressed without talking about the kind of contestation between Mang Matangs and Mahars. So how do you look at this entire thing? Where do you stand on this issue?
No, see, if the subcategorization is about uh, uh, giving welfare to uh, lowest of the low among scheduled castes, then it is absolutely fine, right? But the question is this: that if it is about reservation, then it is not simply about welfare. One has to understand that the reservation has to avail. One has to avail the reservation. Right? In India, first thing we need to understand that this entire narrative or the argument which says that the one particular community have eaten up all the reservation is basically empirically does not this empirical does not stand. Means I have been trying to research. Yes, of course, there are communities which you will see more in the number also because they are numerically more, like for instance in Maharashtra, the Mahas, and they're just not numerically slightly more. They're they compromise the huge the large part of scheduled caste or whether it's a Chamar in northern India. So you will see them more, and there are also historical context of their mobility. Most of these communities also, even during British time and even before that, launched their own movement of building their own institutions or making their people politically conscious about their rights. Right now, and it's not just simply about scheduled caste. Whichever community from the lower rung, like Nadar for that instance from Tamil Nadu, they once upon a time they were considered as untouchable. In present time, they are I don't think even they come under scheduled caste category. Now they are one of the prominent community in Tamil Nadu, right? So whichever community in particular historical time where so-called first time we had the notion of modern state through colonial rule, whichever community could mobilize themselves and have some or other form of negotiation, they mobile themselves, right? And as I said, if it is simply about welfare, then it is absolutely fine. Then state has a scheduled caste budget. State take the money from that budget and directly use that money to most backward from the scheduled caste. But no state does that. Neither even Punjab nor even for that matter Telangana. If you look at the misuse of scheduled caste subplan in all the states, including Punjab, which we started this subcaste subcategorization politics, look at the history of misusing scheduled caste fund in that particular state. You will be amazed. The money has been used for so-called, general purpose. So there, the politics of this, which Congress also started, then the Nitish Kumar did in Bihar, and BJP keeps doing in Maharashtra of Matang politics and all of that. No one has used this mandated budget of scheduled caste for the poorest of the poor among scheduled caste. First thing is that would have been brought the more welfare among them. Now, as I said, reservation is about availing it, right? Now, scheduled caste community, whichever scheduled caste community which is been considered as so-called dominant scheduled caste community, which is again the lie. There is nothing dominant scheduled caste community, because if you look at Mahar and also Chamar in North India, look at the atrocity on them. If they are dominant, they are not even able to bring justice for their own community in the cases of atrocities. Also look at the let's say intra mobility within Mahas for that matter, or among Chamar. It's not that commendable or one can be proud of. So my question is this. My answer is this for this particular question, that the reservation, rather making it more with the population. For instance, in particular state, if we are in 20% number all scheduled caste, then making that reservation limit, more. What state is doing, state is saying, and apart from that, no state no state and no central government led by BJP or Congress or any other coalition have fulfilled reserved seats. So reservation has never been saturated. Backlog has always been the reality. Now, if you say that the some community have monopolized, but the data says the seats have not been fulfilled, forget about monopolization of one particular community. So if you would have fulfilled those particular seats, you would have seen more number from the other less numerical scheduled caste community, but that has not happened. Now in this particular time I am asking this question, where reservation has been reduced to just 2% of government jobs. Where do the Indian state or the Supreme Court wants to give reservation to poorest of the poor among scheduled caste? For instance, in education, tell me, give Supreme Court judge should answer this. Can his son or daughter, without taking a coaching from private institution, or even dream about becoming a good engineer from IIT? So what the state should have done, state should have created a targeted policy for most backward among scheduled caste. And if you becoming more, like for instance, if I am having a good primary education, which was a reality once upon a time where we had a government school. Most of these scheduled caste first generation studied in the government school, which were in functional in nature. Now those government schools have been completely dismantled, or even the so-called autonomous school by our community do not receive fund. Now if you want to get good education, you have to get admitted in so-called good private school. Now if you are a, so now you have broken everything. You have destroyed our education. You have destroyed, all the so-called government institutions. Now where do you want to give reservation to, forget about so-called dominant scheduled caste? I am asking this question, where do you want to give reservation to these subcaste people? Where do you want to place, to whom you want to give the reservation? And Punjab is a classical case for that matter. When they did the subcategorization, what happened? For all these years, one should ask this question, that the Punjab government should produce substantial data, and the Nitish Kumar has to produce substantial data. What has happened after doing this subcategorization of Mahadalit, Dalit, or the Valmikis and the other Dalits in the Punjab, and the distinction between Chamar and the Valmikis and other subcaste. They should produce a data. What has happened? They fulfilled the reserve seat? They haven't. Therefore I see this particular subcategorization is not about that we are against of welfare of a particular community within scheduled caste, but one has to understand that the reservation has to avail. Scheduled caste has to avail the reservation, and government is stopping us where they don't want to. They want to destroy the structure where we automatically get excluded. Now, for instance, Matang in my state, Matangs are largely in villages are landless laborers. Mahars were also landless laborers. They migrated to cities, and they became so-called sasta cheap labor for upper caste factories and other people. Right? Now, do you want to punish them that they left the village? Do you want to punish them that they comes on the street when there is atrocity? Do you want to punish them to build an independent Dalit movement, and to even forget about scheduled caste, to talk about even OBCs and the Adivasis? Do you want to punish them? Now, this is not about welfare. If it is about simply welfare, then state has a so other many mechanism where they can directly bring, or
You know,
directly do the welfare of these marginalized scheduled caste communities, and they can directly, help, have this so-called development. But state does not want to do that. What the state wants to do here, to break this, what I say, that this political consciousness around scheduled caste category, where you can have your independent politics. If there is no politics, there is no negotiation. That's what they're doing now. Now this subcaste thing, you're saying they're so small in number that their own political mobilization will only lead them to have some minimal, negotiation. But when you have the largest scheduled caste category at the national level, or even for that matter state level, you have more space for a negotiation. Now, in this case, all the subcaste, or even the caste which is numerically more in number, needs to understand this and build a movement around this particular category, which is scheduled caste. Yes.
no, I take what you said. But the thing is, I've also heard, what people are saying on the other side. And one of the things that they say is, when you question the existence of dominance, right? They are not using the term dominance in the same way as you use to describe a dominant OBC community, a
Mm,
dominant landed community. When they talk about dominance, I long ago I had this interesting conversation with Rais Muhammad, the founder of Dalit Camera, whose
mm,
former name was Ravichandran. In fact, his studies have been quoted in the Supreme Court judgment as well. Now,
mm,
he would say that, when we say dominance, we talk about which are the communities which are able to produce political leaders who come to represent all of SCs or all of
mm,
Dalits. Now, if you
mm,
look at the faces of Dalit politics, invariably, you yourself mentioned that there are some communities which are numerically larger, like the
mm,
Mahars, like the Jatavs in
mm,
UP. Uh, Now, someone like a Rais would say that invariably you see the big leaders coming only from these communities. You have a Dalit chief minister, deputy chief minister in Telangana, but he is coming from the dominant SC community. He's a Mala. You have a very powerful formation, anti-caste formation, Ambedkarite formation in Tamil Nadu, Tol Tirumavalavan, but then he comes from the so-called alleged dominant community, which is the Pariyar community. You have a Mallikarjun Kharge, who emerges as the president of this national party, and the tallest leader from Karnataka, again comes from the Holaya community, which is considered to be advantaged. You have, I mean, of course, you go to Telangana, where the MRPS movement is very strong, the Madiga Reservation Porata Samiti and their movement. where it is strong, you will go. They have gone to the extent of invoking Babu Jagjivan Ram over Ambedkar, saying that Ambedkar comes from the alleged developed or the dominant community. Now, the simple question therefore arises as to, is it true that when you don't have data, that this kind of emergence of these leaders is one metric by way to judge certain advantage over the other communities, you think?
No, you look at, for instance, in different states, there are different scheduled caste community which has a slightly different relationship with so-called numerically, let's say, more in number scheduled caste community. So, for instance, Ravichandran case, if you look at, I would believe that in Hindi, what do they call? Valmiki community generally. In Hindi way, in Maharashtra, they call it by some other name. What I see, I understand these emotions, like these emotions are valid. However, will this subcategorization will help them to have that negotiation with any political party where they will make sure that they have their chief minister or deputy chief minister? Because in Punjab it did not happen. In Bihar, with Jitaram Manji, was just, we know the politics, how Nitish Kumar projected him for his own politics, and then marginalized him at a level where he's just simply been reduced to one MP and one MLA and something like that. So if one has to even practically look at that, the uh, which combination will help the most marginalized among scheduled castes, is not the combination of going separately and then trying to negotiate with the upper caste or other political parties. Rather, making this combination more radical enough. Even the so-called dominated scheduled caste community needs to understand that if they do not take this in a cognizance, that they do not understand that this why we need to present, or we need to give more stake to most marginalized among ourselves. At least in politics they can do, at least in a movement they can do, if not in a government jobs, because they are not the one who are running state, right? So I guess the problem can be solved. But if you believe that this particular subcategorization will help them, I'll tell you this will rather hamper them. Now, being very practical, I can talk through the experiences of my own state, where you believe or don't believe, even if the Buddhist scheduled castes are not in power, but their social movement even fractured so strong at a ground level, that even there is atrocities on Matan community. And I can say this, on record, that if it Matang or any other scheduled caste community, it is the first Buddhist community, the first community which come on the street and to protest and to make and to create the entire movement. Are they doing any favor? No, they are not doing any favor. This is how the ethics of movement needs to work out. This is and what happened with the Hathras case? How many Valmiki organization, for that matter, came on the street? Again, it is the so-called politically mobilized community among scheduled castes which came on the street and protested against the Hathras case. Right? Now, again, I am saying, are they doing any favor? No. This is how it should work. This is how our movement should work. However, post subcategorization, this will get hampered. The reverse consciousness, or this, uh, if there is a relative difference are there between the communities, it will get more concretized. And who will get benefit out of this? People like Nitish Kumar, who already got benefit out of these things. Congress, upper caste from Telangana
No,
will get the
but
benefit.
Rahul, let me interrupt you here to just, we can both accept the fact that it is because these divisions exist that Dalit politics has not been able to become a force of consequence, has not been able to unite.
No,
When you say that it will become like this, if categorization comes, it will be divided. We can as well say that
no,
it is
I'm not saying
divided.
it will be divided. Divide is already there, and
Hmm.
this divide is not that the so-called numerically dominant community have created. It's not the one particular. It is how the caste. This is how the caste is about this sub. this hierarchy, you know, this relative power and the relative subjugation and all of that. There is absolute power that exists with upper caste, and then there is a relative power that exists among a lower caste. That the so we taking this everything is into account. I'm mostly talking about. My worry is mostly about how do scheduled caste are going to have any negotiation with the Indian state or different political parties. They in if you are so-called parliamentary democracy, then the only things become important is number. Now, for that matter, in Maharashtra, BJP or Congress or NCP cannot fully say that we reject Maratha reservation, or in the silent tone they can say we support Maratha reservation, because Marathas time and again saying that we are numerically more, although that is not been very much well counted that what is their number, but Maratha from their side always present that we are more in the number, and therefore we will hamper it, right?
Right.
So in this regard, in this particular context, my worry is that how scheduled caste is going to have any kind of negotiation. If it is about welfare, if it is about welfare, then yes, that we need to make responsible the Indian state and the central government, that why for so many years Supreme Court in its judgment should have asked the different state government and also to the central government, that after so many years you have this situation that exists, and for that you are basically punishing those who left their villages, came to cities, lost their generation in gutter, somehow got government education, and now somehow got into government jobs or in some other good jobs. You are punishing them, projecting them as an enemy of the different subcaste, right? So if you believe this is going to help any subcaste within scheduled caste community, is completely wrong. For instance, I'll tell you why. If tomorrow Matangs from Maharashtra, if they become politically mobilized, if they start negotiating well, I'm telling you, they will create another category from scheduled caste, and they will that's what I did. My one of my study in Maharashtra about Dalit women representation in the Panchayati Raj system, and in all cases, I interviewed Dalit women, those who are vocal and empowered, those who want to bring some development in Dalit Wada. They, they the mostly Maratha lobby. They would bring this no confidential motion against this particular Dalit Sarpanch जो reserve seat है, and they will then get those Dalit who are not politically come from those community who are not politically mobilized. So for Maratha, this non-politically mobilized community is always good, and it is not even their fault. Those who are not politically mobilized, it carries a lot of historical subjugation and the everyday practical reality they have to confront. But what I'm trying to say, will this solve? This will not solve. I'm saying this will again make situation more complicated. And believe me, reservation is not about welfare. As I said, it has to, and now there is no reservation at all. As I said, that the government jobs and the education has been completely privatized. You cannot forget about making your son journalist or daughter journalist, engineer, whatever, without sending them to so-called good private school. Because across the country, government school are doing really bad, except in few pockets of Delhi, because of what some good effort by Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi. If one see practically, if you see across the different state, I see my family still lives in Islam. Those who work for 12 hours and earn some little bit more money than the other people, they are desperate to send their children to private school so that they can make sure that their children future will be good and fine. Because all neighboring government school where I studied, where my other friends studied, they, you talk to teachers. So what is happening in my slum, except two, three people, this poverty is getting reproduced automatically. Not automatically, but because of the structure. Means no one is saying कि आपका रिजर्वेशन हमने खत्म कर दिया या आपको हम एजुकेशन नहीं देंगे. व्हाट दे आर थिंकिंग कि हम जो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में तुम जा रहे थे, म्युनिसिपल स्कूल में, उसमें टीचर ही नहीं होगा, वो हम बर्बाद कर देंगे, और तुम अगर प्राइवेट स्कूल में नहीं अपने बच्चों को पढ़ा पा रहे हो, तो ऑटोमेटिकली यू विल बिकम पंचर वाला, ऑटोमेटिकली यू विल बिकम अ गार्ड, ऑटोमेटिकली our women will become a domestic worker in some upper class houses. And even after taking good education, they are saying in private sector, as many studies now reporting, that they don't want to take you because of your caste, because there are upper caste, and studies says in our, even in the west and India, that the jobs even in private sector do not get because of so called merit. You get a job because of network. And upper caste has a very thick network in even in private sector. They don't want to allow you. So now the data says from the Ajim Premji Institutes that the educated scheduled caste who are eligible to get so-called good jobs, they are not getting jobs, and therefore among scheduled caste youth, educated youth, there is more unemployment. Now, how do you address this? That's what I'm saying. This Supreme Court judge is, they, either they are very ignorant about the existing reality out of their court, or they are not talking to their children very carefully. If they talk to their own family member, they will understand the reality is very crucial and very bad, right? And therefore we believe that this judgment was very much politically motivated, and Supreme Court is not the god. Supreme Court has to take back this particular decision. The way they did mischief with the SC Act, similar thing they are doing here. And as I said, this subcategorization will bring no benefit to no one. Now I'll just finish my this thing, this small thing. Already they brought EWS. In if there are, let's say, five jobs, five vacancies in one particular department, because of EWS, now what is happening, that the earlier you would get one or two seats within the SC reserve quota. Now because of EWS, that has been reduced. So it is been 1.5 seat something if you count in a number, and that does not convert into two. 1.5 does not convert into two. Rather, it will come convert into one only. Now, if subcategorization, how they are going to divide these particular reserve seats? How they are going to technically do it? In Bihar government, you should ask how they are able to do it. In Punjab, if have they able to if they are implementing it, what happened with this reservation of so-called marginalized among scheduled caste? They don't have any substantial data to prove that their decision was right. They did not even in the court. These particular state governments did not produce the authentic empirical evidence that their idea of subcategorization, or their, for instance, Punjab particularly, that the Punjab government have failed to produce any substantial document which can prove that their case is strong. Still, Supreme Court, without any empirical evidences, same like the upper caste who gives gali to reservation every day and night without citing any data, without citing any debate, they talk against reservation. Similarly, Supreme Court is, without citing any empirical evidences, data, has given such a crucial verdict. And believe me, Sudipto, this verdict, even I'm not bothered about reservation anymore. That which community will get what. I'm saying there is nothing to get now from reservation. They have privatized almost everything. Now, but this divide will affect us for to have a political unity. We always had a hope. We always had a hope whether we emerge or we fall down. History tells us that we are a community. Scheduled caste is a community which, and different communities slowly gaining that consciousness. I know that the Matan community from my state, which once upon a time was completely been, sideline, been cornered differently by Shiv Sena and other so-called Hindu right-wing fold. Now that particular community, there are very good leaders from that community who believes in Ambedkar's Buddhism, and they're working on the ground with very less resources, just because they know if this is the way forward, right?
Mm.
So I believe this particular conscientization of this lower caste community will be stuck down. Now for one Valmiki, or let's say from, in the case of Ravichandran, he has a lot of anger that might be satisfied for some time being, but after 10 years, when he will start studying what has happened with this subcategorization, I can write, and I can tell him on his face that he will not able to produce any substantial number, that how many from his community have been recruited, except in so-called cleaning jobs. Yes.
Right. But I mean, one thing, I mean, there is not a lot of empirical data, like you said, but we have a lot of, empirical material to show, or which clearly shows that the Dalit politics of most states is very, very divided along
Hmm.
these very questions. Now, which is what makes me wonder, what is it that will help a leader like you cut through these various questions which are being raised by different communities. You have come up with this entire economic agenda,
Hmm.
right? And saying that this is the North Star, this is the direction in which we
Yes.
should be heading. You
Yes.
just said it 2 minutes ago, and you've said this many times in the past, that the reservations question is almost obsolete now, because there are no seats available. There are not as many jobs in the public sector. The
There
seats
is
are
no
being
schooling.
reduced.
There is
Right.
no
So this
education for you left.
Right. So this economic agenda, Rahul, as my final question, if you can take your time in answering this, how do you think this economic agenda setting that you are trying to do? You're talking about reservation in private sector. You are bringing a new kind of a language into the Ambedkarite discourse by reminding people that Ambedkar also talked about the economic question. That Ambedkar was very much invested in the class question, in the question of labor.
Yeah.
In your speeches, you almost sound like a one of these union leaders, where you often invoke terms such as mazdoor,
Yeah.
garibi, basti. These are terms which are slightly not very much part of the Ambedkarite discourse, right? It is mostly Brahmanvad,
Hmm.
Jativad,
Hmm.
graded inequality. But ye jo mazdoor, basti, this kind of discourse that you're bringing in, how do you think it will what kind of impact do you think it will have? What impact do you hope to have with this?
No, of course. I believe that although these particular terminologies or these particular understandings are not part of larger popular Ambedkarite discourse, but I believe that the question of or understanding caste through the question of material, phenomena, it basically is a part of Ambedkar's understanding. For instance, if you look at his understanding that how caste is about, as I said, he uses the word colonization. Right. Now, colonization is also means that how do one particular caste is able to reproduce his uh, 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 political power, or let's say economic power. And therefore, I believe, see, what we had a hope from the Indian state, that the Indian state will do away from the caste. But what happened that the Indian state, with the so-called modern Indian state, that the caste became the reality of larger political economy. And why I'm using this word again, so-called Marxist term, political economy, precisely because of this. That when you see the economy of this country, again there are two, three communities which has been historically given legitimacy to control the economy are doing the same thing, right? and and when it comes to institution, the reality is more or less same, is Brahmin, Baniya and other upper caste. So even if it is about just simply you say Brahmanwad caste untouchability, so it is easy for upper caste to say sometime later, you see, we do not practice caste. For instance, with so-called dominant scheduled caste, what are they saying? That there are many scheduled castes who do not face so-called untouchability. But there are scheduled castes who face untouchability. Therefore, this particular scheduled caste which does not face untouchability, kick them out from the scheduled caste category. Then it becomes very easy. But this is what I am saying, that when you as a state, you as a nation, and you have one economic structure, and in this economic structure, if only two, three particular caste, like in Telangana, Kammas, Reddy, and other some dominant caste, if they are able to monopolize the market, and Dalits, Adivasis, and other lower castes are simply cheap labor in Hyderabad and other informal economy. So the question becomes very clear, that we are asking who are labor, who are running Bombay, who are the people who are running Chennai, who are the people who are running your Delhi, and how does your economy work? If your economy is more than 90% informal economy, then the question comes: who are the owners of this informal economy, and who are the laborers in this informal economy? And if one looks reality very closely with data and also with little open eye, it's mostly Dalits, it's mostly Adivasis and lower OBCs who traditionally do not have a land. Now therefore question for us becomes not just the question of this question of touchability and untouchability. And this question of touchability and untouchability, as Baba Sahib said, will never go away if we do not become ourselves very powerful. For instance, you see most of the caste atrocity happens at the places where Dalits are in the minority. Where Dalits form some kind of majority, you do not see most heinous kind of atrocity on Dalits, right? Therefore, and now the question is, how can these Dalit pockets, if even they come, like for instance, they're mostly in slums or in villages. You, for all this year, Indian state, our movement have failed to make realize upper caste that you have to act civil enough. You are not supposed to practice untouchability. You're not supposed to humiliate. Now this talk will not do. No nation gets changed. Everything gets changed by a power, by a force. Whether you see the what happened in the US, unless even with the white liberals, that unless and until president did not say that okay, practicing racism is a crime, no matter what white says, we will make sure this is a law and we will implement this, and student, and we will implement it with force, right? In India, in the absence of having these upper caste liberal, unlike in US, we are mostly we are mostly community who are left among ourselves with, and we have resources जो हमारे पास है अपने आपस में. We do not have that liberal strong liberal lobby also in India. Although मैं उसको घुमा रहा हूँ, but मैं कहने की ये कोशिश कह रहा हूँ that the modern Indian state have failed to forget about bringing Dalits from their poverty. Modern state has even failed to protect them, to protect their houses. Rather, the state has been complicit in reproducing caste and giving impunity to upper caste. Now, in this situation, if we simply say that the caste is about just touchability and untouchability, then we are just simply going to say it for forever. But when it comes to asking a real question about our share in the economy, our share in the so-called democracy, then the question of economy becomes very pertinent and very important. Because we do not believe that this master's morality, that the master will say now I'm good, say now I'm talking to you, I'm touching you, I'm having food with you, now everything is fine. And this is how the caste entire question has been reduced even by our scholars, who treat caste question mostly as an experience. It is not simply about subjective experience, it is also about the material reality which exists outside and which has been reproduced. And as I use word political economy, that the Indian political economy is nothing but the caste. It operates through the caste, and therefore, and you see now in this time where you have so-called globalization capitalism, where everything is been commodified, everything is been measured, everything is been tally and been judged through the economical angle. Why do you want to make Dalit as mere moral subject? Why do you want to just talk about Dalit subjectivity? Why do you want to talk about the materiality of a Dalit? That they are part of your informal economy. It is not simply the responsibility or the question for the Marxists to talk about the informal laborer and the labor union. If you read Ambedkar's speech for the labor union in Delhi, which labor union had invited him, and you see what is he saying there. He is basically scolding them just just to simply that they were doing the trade union activism. Ambedkar said, "You do not need to stuck into the trade activism. You need to aim to capture the state."
Right.
So, so, so I believe that the Dalit question is not simply the question of touchability and untouchability. It will, I guess, remain unless and until we are not very strong enough to fight back. If
Right.
and we Yes, the
Right.
state has
No.
failed. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to finish your point? The state has.
No, I'm saying that the state has failed to give us any kind of protection. Even the
Right.
Indian judiciary acted in tandem with the upper caste. For instance, you see the case of Kerlanji, where how that entire caste atrocity case, both by the government lawyer and the government together, they proved that case was not about caste and therefore not a caste atrocity, right? The blatant so-called progressive state, right? So you can imagine that even after such a blatant, heinous caste atrocity can be proved as a not as an atrocity case, then you can imagine that how the Indian state is completely, uh, you know, uh, is complicit in our subjugation. And therefore, I believe that for Dalit, they need to realize this as soon as possible. Like, they need to realize it quite soon now that the situation has changed. Now the state, you are asking something from state. Now the state says, we don't have anything. Everything is being privatized. You do what you want to do. Now, if everything is privatized, whom should we, हम लोग कहाँ जाए? और हम लोगों को कहाँ जाना है? तो हम लोग केवल अगर यही बात करते रहेंगे, दलित एक्सपीरियंस and all of that, it is not going to solve our problem because majority of people, your city Bangalore, look at your city Bangalore and the data. Now the capitalist says that the capitalism gives the chance of mobility. Look at the city mobility. That number Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai. Look at the data of these particular major cities. That the mobility of the slum people to so-called middle class or upper middle class or whatever, which is none, almost none. That means our people are leaving villages, coming to cities, becoming cheap labor, and they're stuck in these chambers. They take birth there, they die there. But what is the movement that our people want to run? Some symbolic movement. Okay, good. But that symbolic movement is got over, and some other people needs to concentrate on that particular symbolic movement. But everything is not about being symbolic. That I am first Dalit and I am first this, I am first that is. These are all old narratives. We need to get away from this now. This one celebration of one individual, celebration of one heroine, this is not going to help us. We need to ask very structural question, and there's questions. Otherwise, what this heroic story gives false aspiration among people. What I want my people to understand, that you see, that you accept that your situation is really bad, and then only you can begin something from beginning. That's what I believe. Therefore, this Nirashavad is very important for our movement, because for any oppressed movement, what does any state ruled by minority, ruled by ruling minority in India, it's upper caste. They always give you false hope. Therefore, this entire cultural industry work in the tandem, and they always celebrate this one individual. वो देखो रिक्शे वाला का बेटा आईएएस बन गया. But they don't want to tell you that the majority of रिक्शे जो साइकिल रिक्शे चलाने वाले का बेटा, they even die because they do not get good medicine, or they do not get enough food. They do not tell you that how many SC, ST women cannot even feed when they give birth to their children. Now, these are all structural questions. What do you want to celebrate? First Dalit, first this. Okay, it's fine for the cultural consumption, but how long this will go? This is not going to solve the problem of our majority.
Right. Now, when you speak like this, and this is my final question to you, because there's so much. Each of these topics, like I said, I would want to discuss in detail with you. But if you look at how you are trying to distinguish yourself from Dalit or Ambedkarite movements of the past, you're talking about how a lot of them, got into this trap of symbolism, into this trap of, say, subjectivities of
Blind
identity,
identity celebration.
celebrations and things like that. Now, when you do that, automatically the space that you're left with is the space that the left occupies,
Hmm.
right? How do you see that contest unfolding? Do you see a contest unfolding with the left, or do you see that the left is irrelevant and therefore this is open space for you to organize along the question of class, along the question of labor, raising questions of capitalism? Do you think that the field is now, the left is obviously a diminished force, but it still has infrastructure across the country. It still has district level, city level units across the country. Now, the issues that you are raising, the issue of labor, do you think it brings you into conflict with them, or do you think that they are irrelevant to even consider as a worthy opponent? That there is enough and ample space for you to grow in? How do you see this unfolding? This introduction of the class question. How do you think it will unfold with the left being around?
No, obviously the left would want us to talk, to criticize our existing movement and then have some kind of resemblance with their so-called movement or whatever. But I rather believe that I would have, individually, I would have more happy if the left would have been more active and the prominent force in our country, and I believe that would have given more chances for other, many of us to even have a kind of what we call the solidarity, or let's say some kind of unity together. But unfortunately it's not about just left in India, but also left in so-called uh, old this democracy like America. Both Indian left and the American left, if you compare, they are both reformist, they are not anymore left, right? So they are the same another political correct gang, which works in the university of taking all the colors together, and then think that now they have taken everything. There is Dalit, there is Adivasi, there is this, there is that, everything plus plus. You have taken everyone. Now you are perfectly fine. Now left, I believe that the left, for that matter, the question of a labor cannot be traced like that or cannot be handled like that. I believe that if even this is how the class angle or the capitalism works. No matter what, if popular example I can give, that in my classroom when I heard, I was shocked that that how even the man whose only duty is to clean your car, but just because he's a heterosexual man, he is oppressor for the man, or for the person who is not heterosexual or the queer, but owns a car and house. But the power relation between them is been understood, needs to understand relatively. This is what this entire postmodernism or the political correctness was. Now the man who clean your shit, just because he's heterosexual, he is your oppressor, right? And the left is with this particular discourse. They have left. What is left? So left is this. Even if Karan Johar is a gay or a heterosexual, if he comes from particular class, is a class enemy. He is not a queer or he is not an oppressed person. And I believe in that particular ideology, that the reality should always be in the binary. People believe that we should not do the binary discourse. I believe in the binary. We should always, there is a binary, the lower caste, Bahujan, what you call the majority who is oppressed, and the ruling upper caste is a minority, is oppressor. This is the class binary in this country. We started our movement with scheduled caste. Slowly, slowly, we'll build our movement. Again, we taking the labor, because we are the one who are giving. If your, as I said, if your economy is 90%, more than 90% is informal economy, then it's us who are giving you labor. Even if one just sit, even does not do any economy, just sit and think, if the India's economy more than 90% is in informal economy, and if SC, ST, OBC constitute the majority, then who are giving the labor, right? One can simply just do the calculation, although there are facts and the numbers and the reports. My answer is this to your question, that I believe that the left has become more as a political correct unit, which wants to talk about identity, which wants to talk about, like the American left does, same the Indian left wants to do. And I believe that has no more potential, no more radical current for us, at least I believe, to collaborate with them. I believe that as I say that we are a labor in this country, we are the one who has been oppressed. So as Baba Sahib said, we have to build our own movement. We don't need any other left political parties. We understand capitalism very well, how it's basically been intertwined with the caste. We understand that, as Baba Sahib said, that the gender and caste, what people say, they are what do they call? Uh, mm, what do they call? Intersect. Rather, my understanding of a caste through Ambedkar is that caste does not intersect to gender. Rather, there will be no caste if there is no gender. So they are intertwined. You cannot separate them. They don't interject. They don't they don't come like this. They are like this, and therefore we believe that we understand gender in the context of India, in the context of caste, more profoundly than any other political correct feminist group. We believe that the scheduled caste women, scheduled caste man should come together. They do not need to fall into this university trap of political correctness to criminalize our own people. They should do away with that. Rather, we need to build a very strong, as I said, scheduled caste community and take the question of labor, take the question of capital as a prominent question. I spoke a lot. I don't know if I
No,
made
no.
any sense, but yes,
No, no, it did make sense. And of course, now I'm able to kind of see the map and where Rahul Sonpimple and the AIISCA stands in that map. I'm able to see potential allies there. I'm able to see people with whom you don't want to do business, who you will never do business with. It's a great insight into the kind of politics you play, Rahul Sonpimple. That was Rahul Sonpimple and his ism. Some of you would have agreed with him, some of you would have disagreed. Please write in, comment, tell us what you thought about Rahul Sonpimple and his ism, and of course, tell us what you think about this show. But for now, that's all we have for this episode, Rahul. Thank you so much for coming on
thank
What's Your Ism.
thank you,
Thank you.
Sudipto. Thank you for giving me chance. Thank you very much. Really glad and humble. Thank you.